Plan your next trip with Ride Norfolk. Ride Norfolk operates an on-demand transit service across Norfolk County from Monday to Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Enjoy the podcast today.
Advantage Athletic Therapy, personalized rehabilitation programs with a whole body approach. Enjoy the podcast.
Hey, Lori, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Hey, what book are you going to get me for Christmas this year? I'm just curious.
I'm going to get you Breath by James Nestor. That's
Breath.
actually what we're talking. Breath by James Nestor.
Perfect. So let's get into it. What am I going to learn when I read this book?
This book is full of research, breathing studies, some extreme breathing studies. That's not what I'm going to cover today. But through each of those pieces, it pulled out things that really made a lot of sense. Last month, we talked about polyvagal and vagus nerve. This book talks about the same thing, but in a very different way through the active breathing. And some of the things that really impressed me in this book, they state that as a society, we don't breathe well. As a society, that sometimes our anxiety is causing us to overbreathe, and then we overbreathe because we're anxious. And the fact that fear and anxiety have physical manifestations in our body, but we can learn to control our breathing, which can change and decrease those manifestations, how we're living. So breathe, breath, that's the entire topic of this book.
It's amazing, too, when you look at how important breathing is to your own mental health, right? Just what you sort of talked about is that anxiety level or just calming. Yeah, it is truly amazing. I often wondered when running, because you get to a zone where your breathing just sort of seems like it's almost so natural and relaxed.
Yeah.
If that's sort of what this gentleman's talking about.
He is. There's actually a section about that. When I read that, I smiled and thought of you, Dave, because that's exactly what you've talked about before. There's another section where he's talking about just exhalation, the full exhalation of the lungs. And we can do that through singing, through talking, through yawning, and through sighing. So all of these acts, including, like you said, running and our regulation of breathing when we run or have any physical exercise, is really the same thing.
It's amazing that, like, we don't really take enough time, do we? Because like you said earlier, we don't slow down to, take that deep breath and sort of let it settle and understand. And just the physical element. I was surprised last November, I talked to a therapist, a physiotherapist, who explained how I wasn't breathing deep enough sometimes. And that was, you need that for your lungs and your whole body, not just your lungs, but your whole body needs that, I don't know what you want to call it, but that breath to fill everything.
Fill and the exhalation. So there's several chapters in the book that talk about that. There was one interesting study. It was the National Institute of Health. Chesney and Anderson did a full research piece. What they were looking at, Dave, is our society and how driven we are by technology. So what they suggest and what they found is that when we sit and scroll through email, scroll through Facebook, do all this doom scrolling, that we can actually stop breathing. Like sleep apnea, where our sleep is disrupted by a change in our breathing. Our daily action, there is something now called email apnea, where we can actually stop breathing while we are doing things like doom scrolling and on email.
Really? So subconsciously, are you doing that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's the amygdala and chemoreceptors in the brain that our breath is so relaxed and that we are not thinking about it. We can actually stop breathing. So that was amazing when I read that, Dave. I thought, wow, as a society, we need to really think about regulating our breath. Inhalation, exhalation. They actually land, or he lands a few times on 5.5 seconds for a breath. Full inhalation, hold it. Full exhalation, hold it. So there are several breathing techniques in the book. It's actually the last 20 pages or so is a section just about breathing strategies. So that is an excellent section in this book as well. Our daily lives, particularly while we're on email or not really thinking about what we're doing, we should consciously think about full, deep, slow breaths.
I'm curious about that now, because when, let's say you got a really negative email and it just, makes you intense. and you don't breathe through it, like that anxiety, that frustration stays there, doesn't it? You're not releasing it. So, and if it's the overload of this constantly in a day, yeah, I could see that. Like I could understand that a little bit now, because you become so rigid almost that you forget to just let go.
And that's part of what he's talking about. As a society, we live under so much stress that we're not breathing well. So, deliberate thought around breathing, deliberate thought around full exhalation, and deliberate thought about nose breathing. He also says so many of us are mouth breathers that is not helpful for us as well. So, he
Yes.
really talks about nasal breathing. And there's one piece as well that I absolutely liked, because last month we talked about sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. You'll remember from last month that sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze when we're anxious, like you just said. Parasympathetic is when we're calming and when we're relaxed. And I loved the section in the book where he's talking about we can consciously think about breathing through different nostrils. So if we are breathing through the right nostril, we're actually stimulating sympathetic, which is that anxiety driven fight, flight, freeze. If we're breathing through the left nostril, we're stimulating parasympathetic, relaxing and calm. So he suggests that we alternate and really do deep breaths. And if we're anxious, we think about breathing through right nostril, because it will calm the body and help us relax.
Does the breathing, I'm confused by it a little bit. Does the breathing stimulate the system? Like what causes that? Like, if you're just doing the right side, is that oxygen allowing something to flow? Like what, do you understand that?
Well, I had to read that section a few times. I really had to go back to it. And absolutely, yes, that when we're breathing through the left nostril, so if our right is covered, we are stimulating parasympathetic responses, which is that response to calm, that response just to slow down our body. And it does work. Actually, the entire month since I suggested to you, I've been practicing it myself, deliberately thinking about that whenever I've been anxious. So even myself, I can see the difference because it's stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system.
So it's helping to regulate your system and bring it back to a normal level when you do
Yeah,
that, correct?
absolutely. Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. And particularly the exhalation, right? So they're focusing on that 5.5-second breath, full inhalation in, full exhalation out. That is really the key when he's talking about that portion of the book.
I've, never really thought about it that way. When you mentioned about a lot of people breathing through their mouth, I think a lot of us do that and don't actually use the nose the way we're supposed to. Maybe sometimes because of sinuses or whatever. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's really important to understand that and use that part of the body and do that. We got a little bit of everything going on here today, a little bit of mental health, a little bit of
Yeah,
calming yourself, using your own body as a tool, right? We don't do that enough, do
absolutely.
we?
Absolutely. So the book covers that as well. If we look at ancient societies, they didn't have these issues. Even down to chewing, their jaw structure was different because of the foods they ate. He does an excellent job of walking you through all of those things to think about. So as a society, we're not breathing deep enough. We're not slowing down. We are driven by anxiety. We're driven by immediacy, not the way our bodies might have been operating centuries ago.
I don't think it, and I'm curious now because you said you've been doing this the last 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Is it an overall feeling better, or is it just that one element? I'm just curious.
No, it's overall. So the book really dives into all kinds of things that are going on in our body, from stress to weight management to how we're eating, what we're eating, how we're chewing. All of those things are in the book. So it really opened my eyes about all of those. But from an overall wellness perspective, in my opinion, it's really starting with breath and breathing. And what I can add, Dave, is
Oh
about, I
wow.
think it was 2008, a professional suggested, focus on your breathing, learn how to breathe. I was so stressed out at the time, I could not listen to that message. And now I'm in a role where I
Wow.
help clients develop these breathing strategies all the time. And I can definitely see the difference. I still live with stress, but my body doesn't respond the same way. So I appreciate what that person told me years ago. And I appreciate that sometimes we're not ready to hear the message, but once we do, and once we practice it, I can validate the results because I feel incredibly different, even though I still live under stress.
I think you just hit on a topic for next year, because I do think I've did this and you've did this. We refuse to hear the message. There's got to be some way, some technique to actually go, wait a minute, I need to hear, I don't want to hear this right now, but I need to think about this, right? And I think a lot of us do that because we're caught in the moment and it's not at the top of our agenda, and we forget that this is something that will help us long term sometimes. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'd be interested to see what your techniques are for that, because you struggle to, I'm not thinking about things my wife tells me to do either. I'm thinking about deeper things. Okay, come on. So it's just kind of, you get into that blob and you don't want to hear it right now. You're like, I don't want to hear this right now, right? But you probably, that's probably at the moment when you need to hear it most. But we'll talk about that another day. So breathing is, go ahead.
It is. And you're right, Dave. And that is another topic for another day. And sometimes it's just that gentleness of, in my role, being able to suggest and talk about things, not with the expectation that a client is going to move in that direction, but just planting that seed. So when the client's ready, then they can hear that message. So that's how I maneuver through that when I'm working with someone. But you're right, in life, this happens with our family and friends as well.
So before you came on the show this morning, how much breathing did you have to do to talk to me? I'm curious now.
Always a pleasure, Dave. It's never, ever a concern.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Dave.
Thank you for the positive words.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, have a happy holiday. Enjoy. I look forward to touching base with you in the new year.
Wonderful. And what I would encourage people is, if you want to spend time with family and friends, great. But you might have someone in your network that really doesn't want to spend a lot of time. The holidays are not always a happy time for everyone. So please be sensitive with each other. Please be kind to yourself and find and cultivate some joy.